It's TK Friday, and today on The Joy of Editing, I'll be doing a full edit of an image that I'm calling Summit Reflections. Stay tuned. Hello everyone, and welcome to The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. It is TK Friday. Today's image comes to us from Jay Carver. Thank you, Jay. As always, you can download the image and the PDF notes. I'll have links in the description below this video. Don't forget to click on more to open up that description, or you won't find the links. And I have some special important news for you today. Starting today, November 24th, 2023 through Monday, November 27th at midnight, there's a Black Friday sale. You can get the TK9 plugin for Photoshop and training videos for 25% off during the Black Friday sale. Just use my promo code DK15 and you'll get the 25% off. After the sale, it'll go back to 15% off, but during the sale, you'll get 25% off your purchase. So please use my promo code DK15, because when you do, I make a small commission, and you're helping to support the joy of editing when you do that, and so I thank you for it. Let's go ahead and jump right into this full edit. Today I'm starting out here in Lightroom as always. I'm using a linear profile for Jay's camera, a Fuji X-E1 I believe it is. I basically click auto. I didn't adjust the temperature or tint. I left that the way it was. Made sure I wasn't clipping whites or blacks. I have just a slight amount of clipping there, but not much in the blacks. So I'm not really worried about that. And then as far as detail, I'm just using a little bit of sharpening with some masking and some color noise reduction. That's it on this image. And as far as lens corrections, I always like to use remove chromatic aberrations and enable profile corrections. So I have those both checked on. And that's all I've done here. And then at this point, I would right click, and I tell you this every week, and go to Edit in Photoshop 2024, but I'm already over there. And here we are in Photoshop ready to roll. Hey, by the way, if you have an image you'd like me to edit on a TK Friday, just go into the description of this video, scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a Contact Me. Click on that Contact Me link and contact me, and we could talk about doing one of your images on a TK Friday. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, I always like to start out with balance and contrast, and I like to do the foreground separate from the sky. In this image, though, I was having a little bit of an issue here. That wasn't working out, so what I ended up doing, see this area right here with this little hill that comes up here and the water area? I'll select this area separately, the mountain area separately, as well as the sky area, all separately, and I'll balance and contrast the three different main parts of this image. It's really not hard to do, and it's fun to do. At least it is for me, and I hope it is for you too. The first thing I'll do, and this is easy, is select the sky. So come to the combo or the CX panel, hold your Command or Control key down and click on the sky button, and that will save out your sky as a channel. And now what we're going to do is grab an object selection tool, and I'm in the rectangle mode. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to go right here and draw a rectangle right around this area here and see what we get. Now it's missed this area right here, so here's what I'll do. I'll get a lasso tool. You can type out, oh, and it's missed this area too right here. Hold your shift key down, which will add, and just grab around this area, lasso around it, and it'll put it in, and hold your shift key down again. See the little plus there on the lasso tool? If I release the shift, you don't see the plus anymore. Pressing down the shift again, and I'll just lasso right around there. And there we have that area right there. Now we need to save this out as a channel. On the combo or CX panel, click this button, and we'll just type in the name. How about lower foreground? And click OK. Now what we need to do is select the mountain. Right now I still have the lasso tool, so let's click on the object selection tool, and I'm still in that rectangle mode, and let's just see if we can make a rectangle around here and select that mountain. And yeah, it's got that entire mountain, so we're in good shape. So we'll click this same button on either the combo or CX panel, and we'll just call this mountain, and click OK. And now you can see we have a sky, lower foreground, and mountain saved out as channels. That was step one, by the way, and this is all in your PDF notes. So now we're going to come up and click on the luminosity mask button, and I always like to use a Midtones 3 just to keep the darkest shadows and the lightest highlights from clipping, meaning losing all detail. We don't want that to happen, so that's going to protect that from happening. And we're just going to output this to a color grading tool. So click on the color grading tool button right here, and there we have it. And now what I want to do is duplicate this, because I'm going to do 3 balance and contrasts on 3 separate areas: sky, lower foreground, and mountain. So here's our first one. So click this button right here. We can duplicate that, and click this button again and duplicate that color grading layer again. So we have 3 color grading layers, and they all have a MIDS 3 mask on them. So now we're going to make that first color grading layer active. And now we're on step 3, and I hope you're having as much fun as I'm having here. Now we're going to grab our trusty mask calculator in the combo or CX panel. So I'm going to click this button right here. In fact, hold your Command or Control key down. That'll keep it open so we don't have to keep opening it up. Because once you use it, it closes itself automatically. If you Command or Control click it, it'll stay open until you decide to close it by clicking this X, which of course you would want to close it eventually to get to your combo or your CX panel, whichever one you're using. But here you can see I have a sky, lower foreground, and mountain, which reflects what's saved out in my channels down here, you see. I want to start with the lower foreground, so let's click on lower foreground. Now what I want is this lower foreground mask intersected with this MIDS 3 mask. And to do that, click this X, which stands for intersection. So click on X, and now you can see there it is right there. There's my lower foreground with the MIDS 3. Pretty cool, right? And now let's make some adjustments. I think I'll start out with shadows. So I'll click the shadow button. And what I want to do is just darken up those shadows a bit to right there, -23. Now let's move over to midtone. So click on the midtone button. And now I want to open up the midtones. I do want to really open these up. So I'm going to start to drag this to the right. Now, when you drag this brightness slider, you don't see a change until you release the click of your mouse. You see that? So I'm going to keep dragging and releasing the click along the way. But I ended up coming over to +54 right there. And then I just want to slightly warm this area up. You see my cursor here in the color wheel? Just hover it over an area where you want it to go. And at the point of the cursor, it'll drop that color grade. So I'm going to go to about right here. Just warm it up just slightly, right like that. And now I'm going to go to highlight. So I'm going to click on the highlight button because now I'm going to look at this snow right here. And I'm going to drag this over a good bit to right here. And that snow just gets a little bit lighter right there. So let's check it out. Here is the before. I'm just on this color grading layer. Here is the before. And now here is the after. And now we're going to work in the mountain. So click on this layer to make it active. And now the mask calculator is still open, so we're going to click on mountain. And now we're going to click X to intersect the mountain. There you go, right there. And now we can use the color grading tool to adjust the mountain. I'll start out with shadows, so I'll click the shadow button. And I just want to deepen up those shadows, so I'm going to drag this brightness slider to the left to make those shadows darker. And I'll take it right here to -27. And I just want to slightly cool off those shadows. So I'm just going to hover my cursor on the color wheel right here and give it a click. That just adds a little bit of blue tint to the shadow areas, which is nice. And now we're going to go to midtone, so we'll click on the midtone button. And I just want to slightly open up the midtones, not much, to like a +12. That's all I want to do there. And now we're going to go to highlights, and I want to pull my highlights back just to protect the snow up here in the mountain. So I'm going to drag this slider to the left to like a -35. Now here's the before. And here is the after. So far, so good. Now we're going to go to the next layer. Click it to make it active. Now we're going to work on the sky. Now let's come back to the mask calculator. Let's click on sky. And again, we want to click X to intersect the sky with that MIDS 3 mask. I'll start out with the midtones, so click on the midtone button, and I just want to darken up the midtones a little bit to somewhere right around here, like a -19. And now let's go to highlights, so click on the highlight button, and I just want to open up the highlights a bit to right around here. And now I'm going to go to shadows, and I'm going to slightly open up the shadows, just a really small amount, +10. So here's the before, and here is the after. Now that we're done with balance and contrast, let's move on to the next step. I'm going to go ahead and close my mask calculator to get my combo panel back. And what I want to do next is lighten up midtones and add a little bit of contrast to midtones. And to do that, I'll do something a little bit different. Right now, my color grading tool's in the way, so I'm going to click X so I can see my multi-mask panel. Nothing changes over here in the color grading layers, by the way. So I'm going to grab a luminosity mask. So I'm going to click this button here, and I want to use a mids 1. We have 3 separate midtones masks. 1, 2, they get lighter as you go, and 3, but they're all midtones. And the reason I'm using midtones 1 is because I don't want to add a lot of adjustment here, just a minimal adjustment. So I'm using midtones 1. And I usually output it to a curves adjustment layer and put it in a screen blend mode to lighten it up. But this time I'm going to do something different. So I'm going to send this out to a brightness contrast adjustment. And we'll see how well this method works. Now, there's many different ways of doing the same things in Photoshop and also with the TK9 plugin for Photoshop. So let's go ahead and lighten up the midtones. So remember, we have this mids 1 mask controlling this to only target midtones. So I'm going to drag this to the right. And the nice thing here is when you move the slider, you can actually see it changing when you move it. And I'm going to take it over here to 97. And now let's pop up the contrast a little bit. So I'm going to drag this slider to the right. You can see that contrast coming up, right? And I'm going to go right here. Now, I like this adjustment, except for the fact I do not like what it's done to the mountain here. But we could take care of that. So let's come back to the trusty mask calculator. Click on the mask calculator button, because look what we can do here. We have the mountain, right? So click on mountain. That's the mountain mask. And now what we can do is use the mask calculator and subtract the mountain from the mids 1 mask by clicking the minus. And now that mountain is dropped out of that adjustment. So check it out. Here is the before, and now here is the after, and the mountain is not being affected. So far, I really like the image. Let's take a look where we've come from. So on my combo panel, I'm going to click my before after button. So here's where we started. And now we're here, and I really like this. So now what I want to do next, I feel this water, especially the mountain area in the water, is way too light. It doesn't look natural. It needs to be darkened down because it would not normally be this light. It should be darker. So let's darken it up a bit. Now, we have a lot of color down in here, and this mountain has a certain color to it. And so what I can do is try a color mask. And so I'll click the color mask button. And what I want to do is select an area that represents that mountain area, and I think right here would be good. So I'm going to click on this right here and click OK. And now we can see here is our mask. And what I want to do is just brighten up that mask a bit by taking this brightness slider and dragging it to the right to somewhere right about there. Now I only want the water area, so what I'm going to do is grab a marquee tool. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to use the rectangle marquee tool. And now where the water meets the land, I'm going to click and drag out a selection just like that. And we could do a mask the mask. So this button right here, if we click it, we're going to get a Gaussian blur that comes up here. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of a 10 pixel radius blur on here. How about 9.9 and click OK. Just so it fades really nice right there. And there's our mask, and now we need to output it. So let's use that brightness contrast adjustment again. Let's click this button. And now let's see if we can darken it up with this brightness contrast adjustment. And the nice thing about the brightness contrast, we have brightness as well as contrast. So we have 2 different things we can do here. So let's start with brightness and pull the brightness back. And I think I'm going to come back to -80, and let's give it a little bit of contrast. And how about 62? So let's take a look. Here is the before, and here's the after. Now that's more like it. That looks more like it should look in the scene. Now, as I study this image, and that's what I like to do, is study the image and look for issues, things that I need to fix. And I think the sky has a little bit too much saturation in it. I think a color mask can help us here. I'll go ahead and click the color mask button. And I'm going to pick this color right up here in the sky and click OK. And there's our mask. Now what I'll do is give it a little bit more brightness to lighten that up for a stronger selection. I think to like right here should be good. Let's output that to a hue saturation adjustment layer. So we'll click this button right here. Now, I don't need to use the picker to pick the blue because I've already targeted blue. So I'm just using master here. And I just want to pull my saturation back a little bit to like right there, -10, and I just want to lighten it up slightly. And so I'll take it right here to +3. So check it out. Here is the before, and here is the after, and I think that looks better. Next up, it's going to be these foreground rocks, the mountain, and this little area right here. I want to pop out some texture and detail in these areas, and just like last week, I'm going to use that same technique. If you haven't seen that video, you may want to go back and watch last week's tutorial, but I'm going to do it again here today. What I'll do is take this image into the camera raw filter, and to do that, I need a pixel layer to do it, so I need to stamp all these layers together, and I want to turn it into a smart object in case we need to go back and readjust it. It's always a good idea to do that. Now last week I showed you I clicked this button and stamped all the layers together, and then I clicked this button to turn it into a smart object, but there is a better way of doing it, a quicker way, and Tony told me this the other day, and I didn't realize you could do this, so I'm going to share it with you. And that is, on a Mac, hold your Command key down. On a PC, hold your Control key down and click on this button to turn a layer into a smart object. And if you do that and click it, it will stamp your layers together and turn it into a smart object, all with one click. So that's pretty nice, right? And who doesn't love a good shortcut? I know I do, and I bet you do too. And now simply click this button, ACR, and we'll go into the camera raw filter. And what you want to do is find effects. Now, if all your modules are shut, click on effects to open it up. And we're going to start out with texture. And I'm going to drag the texture to the right over to like right here, 40. You see that nice texture popping out. And now we're going to do some clarity on there. And I'm going to drag this to the right over to 25 right there. And see all that texture and detail popping out. And now a little bit of dehaze adds a little bit of contrast and a little bit of saturation. Its main use is for getting rid of haze, but I like to add it to my texture and clarity adjustments. I'm going to drag it over to 25. So I have 25 on dehaze, clarity, and 40 on texture. Now that's on the entire image, and it's way too much. And by the way, I want to add different amounts to the rock, the foreground area right here. This middle foreground, let's call it, and then the mountain. I want a lot of texture on the mountain, so different amounts on different areas. So how can we do it? I'll show you. Let's click OK. And now we're back in Photoshop. So the first thing I want to do is put a mask on that, a black hide all mask. So on the combo panel, we'll click this button right here, and now that adjustment goes away. I'll start out with these rocks in the water. Now I want a lot of texture on here. So what I'll do is grab our object selection tool, and I'm still in the rectangle mode, and let's see if we can select this. So I'll just draw a rectangle around the rocks, and yeah, that's doing a great job. And now what we can do is we can fill this, okay? Now we have a fill button right here on our combo panel. You'll find one on the CX panel as well. But I'm going to click this button right here, and what I want to do is see where it says contents. This is a drop down. I want to fill it with white. Click OK, and look at that adjustment right there, okay? Now I can deselect that by clicking this button right here. And now if you'll notice the black mask, we now see the rocks are filled with white, so they're receiving all of that detail 100%. Now there's some debris here in the water, and what we could do is grab a black brush, so click on the black brush button. And now with a really small soft edge brush, you see my little brush, it's really tiny here. And what I'll do is just, on this little debris here, I'll just paint over it because I want the texture also to come out in the shadows in the water from the rock. So I'm just going to paint over these little bits of debris here just so they're toned down and they don't look like they're sticking out, okay? Even over here, a little bit of this that's got selected. Just paint that. Okay, so that looks really nice. So that's the rocks. Next, what I want to do is grab this foreground area. So let's come back up and grab the object selection tool. And let's see if we can grab this whole area here. I think we can. So let's go ahead and drag the whole way across here like so. And yeah, that selected that entire area. Now, I want to fill this too, but I only want to fill it with a small amount here. I don't want a lot of detail here, but I want a little bit of detail. So let's come back to the fill tool by clicking on it here. And right now it's at white. So click the drop down and click on color. And now you'll notice this circle is the whole way over to the left. Okay, so there's no saturation. Notice this H is for hue, S is for saturation. It's set at 0%. And right now brightness is set at 30%. And that's what I want, 30%. But if yours doesn't say 30%, you can highlight this and type in a number. But 30% is what I want. Click OK, and then you have to click Fill OK on fill as well. Let's get rid of the marching ants by clicking this button right here. Now, if you'll notice our mask, if I click the double arrow button, you can see, so I have 30% gray right there on that middle ground area, middle foreground, and then I have the rocks at 100%. Click this button again, we can see the image, and I'll shut this layer off. So here's before. So notice these rocks and notice this middle foreground here. I'm going to turn it on. So I got 100% of texture here, 30% here, and now we're going to work on the mountain. Now, if you recall, we saved out a mountain selection in channels, so we can use our mask calculator. So let's click on the mask calculator. We're going to select the mountain by clicking on it, and this time we're going to load it as a selection by clicking this button right here. That loads it up as a selection. Now, we don't see the marching ants because they're hidden for us by the panel, but you can see by the selection indicator that I do have a selection. If you want to see that selection, by the way, you could click this button right here on the combo or CX panel, and you can see there's our selection, right? Click it again, it just hides it, but it's still selected as the selection indicator shows. And now we'll click the fill button, and we're going to click the drop down. Right now it's on color, and we want to fill it with white. So click white, and we'll click OK. And now we have 100% of that detail on the mountain. And so now let's take a look. Here is our before. I'm going to this layer, shutting the eye off. Here's the before, and here's the after. 100% on the rocks in the water, 30% on the middle foreground, 100% on the mountain. Pretty nice, right? That we could get all that on one layer. And remember, this is a smart object. You can double click camera raw filter and always go back in there and alter any of those effect adjustments, which is really nice. The next thing I want to do is on this little grassy area in this middle foreground area, I just want to increase the green saturation a little bit and also lighten it up a little bit. And to do that, I'll use a color grading tool. But first I need to make a selection. So I'm going to use a color mask to get that selection. So we'll click this button and we'll select some of the green up on this hill, like maybe right here, and click OK. And now we have that selection. So let's brighten up that selection by taking this brightness slider to the right, just somewhere right around in there. And now we can tighten it up. I'll move this slider into the left, just somewhere maybe right about there. And then also, I can also tighten it up by taking this top circle and dragging it closer to green, and I'll drag it, see how it tightens it up. Yeah, maybe right about there should do the trick. And now I only want this area right in here. So what I can do up here at the top is grab this black brush in the refinement section here, and now with a pretty decent sized brush with a nice soft edge at 100% opacity. If yours doesn't show 100% opacity, type 0 for the 0 key. I'm going to be close around this edge down in here. I'm just going to paint off this area first, just around the edge, being a little careful so I don't get that. Okay, something like that, paint off here. Now I can make my brush larger and just paint off here. So don't forget you have brush tools here in masking that you can refine things with, okay? And then for this area down in here, I'll do something a little different. I'm going to grab my marquee tool, and what I want to do is just click and drag a marquee right around this area right here. And there's a fill button right here. I'm going to click my X to get rid of this information here. I have a fill button here, this button right here, so I'm going to click it, and the fill dialog comes up, and I want to fill this with black. So let's just click on black and click OK. And now we get a Gaussian blur, so we can adjust the Gaussian blur here. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it at 0.1 where it's defaulted at. And I'll grab another black brush. And what I want to do is, with a nice small soft edge brush, I'm just going to clean up this edge right here. Just like that. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm just going to paint this off here with that soft edge brush. Helps to whisper when you're doing this. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but just like that. That's all I want. Now, I used that fill button, right? But I could have just as easily marqueed around this top portion here and done a mask the mask as well. Either way would have worked, but I just wanted to let you know there is a fill button here. And let me show you how else you can use that fill button. You see right here, there's a little bit of residue in here that is in the mask. I could grab a lasso tool and just kind of lasso around this area just like this. And then I could use that fill button, click on it, and choose black for contents and click OK. And now that's cleaned up. And I don't need Gaussian blur. It defaults at a 0.1, which is no Gaussian blur. Just click OK. So that fill button can come in handy, but I just wanted to point that out today in case you were ever wondering what some of these tools up here can do for you. And now that I have my mask, I want to output that to a color grading tool and we can make an adjustment. Now, the first thing I want to do is give this grassy area a little more green. So I'm going to click on the Midtone button and click on this picker and click some of the green tone like right here and click OK. And that gives it that green color grade. You see that? And now I want to just lighten that up a little bit. Not too much. I'm just going to take it over to right here, a +20. See how that just lights that up a little bit? And now I'm going to go to shadows and just enrich those shadows a little bit. So I'll drag the shadow slider to the left to say right there -17. So check it out. Here is the before. And here's the after. It just kind of lights that little middle foreground up. And I think that looks nice. 2 more steps and we're done. I'm going to go ahead and put a basic vignette on this image. So if your actions aren't open, click your TK action button. Mine are already opened on my CX panel. So I'm just going to click vignette. Now, the Gaussian blur dialog comes up and I always accept the radius for what it gives me. And it always works out. So I'm going to click OK. Now, it defaults at 30% opacity. I'm going to leave it there for now, but what I want to do is use Edit Blend Diff. Now, right now, my color grading tool's in the way. I can click X to get rid of the color grading tool. Nothing changes on the color grading layer. And then I'm going to go to this button right here and click it for Edit Blend Diff. And I'm going to try No Darks 1. Now, watch the edges where the vignette is. Here's No Darks 1. You can see them get a little lighter, and here's No Darks 2. And I think I want No Darks 2. Now, I'm going to come to the vignette layer. I'm going to shut it off by clicking the eye. Here's before, and here's the after. I think it's a little too strong, so I'm going to pull my opacity back to like 25%. Now, here's the before, and here's the after, and I have one more step, and that's one more action. If your actions aren't open, click your TK button. Mine are already opened, and I'm going to use this action right here, Color Loom, which stands for color luminosity. I always like to try this on my images. When it works, it's fantastic. Sometimes it doesn't help that much, but on this image, it's really going to help out. So I'm going to click this button, and what we get is a black and white adjustment layer in the luminosity blend mode. So when I adjust these different color sliders, it will only be adjusting the luminosity values of the colors. And so effectively what we're doing is adjusting the color contrast of the image, which is really nice. I'll start out on the top and I'll start with reds. I'm going to darken my reds. I'll drag it to the left over to right here, -13. And now I want to go with yellows. I want to darken up my yellows just a little wee bit. So I'll drag this to the left to right there, 45. And now we're going to go to greens, and I want to lighten up my greens a bit to right there, +116, and now cyans. I'm going to lighten up the cyans a bit. I'll drag this to the right to 145, and now for the blues, I just want to lighten up the blues slightly, not much, 15. Now check this out. Here is the before, and here is the after. So that's a pretty dramatic adjustment, wouldn't you say? And that's it for this image, but let's go ahead and take a look at the overall before and after. So I'm going to come to my combo panel and click this button right here to see the before. We started out here and we end up here. Well, I hope you give this edit a try. Another TK Friday comes to a close. Hey, don't forget about the Black Friday sale. You know, you can save 25% off. If you need some videos, now's a good chance to pick them up at 25% off. Don't forget to use my promo code DK15. I really appreciate it when you do that. Hey, if you enjoyed today's tutorial, please give it a like. Share it with your friends. If you're not yet a subscriber, please subscribe. Click that bell notification icon and click all so you'll receive all notifications. Every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me again on this TK Friday. I'll see you all right here next time, but until then, happy editing!